Right, good evening everybody. One or two people I know are running late for various reasons, but I think we'll get going. So good evening everyone. Welcome to members of the Local Plan Subcommittee, and welcome to those watching on screen and anybody else watching us. I'll start with apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillors Bowers, Butland, Coleridge and Cunningham. Councillor Mrs Dervish isn't here yet. I'm hoping she's maybe on her way, and Councillor Abbott has advised that he may be running a few minutes late. Everybody else is here and it's very nice to see you. Minutes of the previous meeting. The last meeting was actually 25th of November, so nearly 4 months ago. I don't know if you managed to locate the minutes. Just as a reminder, we discussed the main modifications to the draft Section 2 local plan and the Bures Hamlet and Bures St Mary neighbourhood area application. Has anybody got any comments, or are people happy for me to sign the minutes? Can I just have somebody move and second? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Scattergood and Councillor Everard. Yes, I'm going to do that. Right. So, declarations of interest. To declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the code of conduct for members and having taken appropriate advice where necessary before the meeting. Yes, Councillor Thorogood.
Yes, having taken advice from officers, I declare a non-pecuniary interest in item number 5, which is the call for sites discussion on the minerals local plan changes. And that's because I'm not a member of CRAC, that is Coggeshall Against the Quarry, but I'm a supporter of their aims, and I have campaigned against it and written various letters in the newspaper against it and on social media. So what I'll be doing is speaking as a member of the public for 3 minutes on that item, and then I will leave before the discussion and vote.
Yes, fine. Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. And we've had a copy of your statement, which I've printed off and read. Were there any other declarations? Councillor Mrs Scattergood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wish to declare an interest, a non-pecuniary interest in item 6. The power infrastructure project covers all the villages that I represent.
Right, thank you.
There have been loads of meetings. I haven't attended any because of sick leave, so I wish to stay and vote.
Fine, thank you. Anyone else? No? Right, in that case we can move on to item 4, which is public question time. So Councillor Thorogood, if you'd like to read your statement and then leave the chamber, because the item you are interested in is immediately afterwards. Fine. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Madam Chairman. I have slightly changed this to try and shorten it, because I'm not sure that I would get it all in the 3 minutes.
That's right. Well, so I'll let you get through it. Don't worry.
Okay. So there's so Essex are doing a call for sites and consultating on the minerals plan up until 2029. I believe they're looking for about 4 million extra tonnes of sand and gravel. So the £9 million. So Blackwater Aggregates and the Environment Agency have got together, or are getting together to submit a plan for the Coggeshall flood alleviation scheme, which will be financed by a quarry right next door to Coggeshall. So the £9 million Coggeshall and Kelvedon Clearing and Flood Alleviation Scheme relies on Blackwater Aggregates extracting 13 million tonnes, way above what Essex are looking for, of aggregate from 155 hectare sites over a period of 20 years, which in our view, or many of the residents' view, will destroy the local landscape and natural environment immediately on Coggeshall's doorstep. The quarry if granted permission, would be bigger than the footprint of Coggeshall itself and would be within 150 metres of some homes and a section of the River Blackwater that is the home to otter, kingfisher and jenny wren. I've seen them myself down there, and lots of other wildlife. The scheme, if it went ahead, the flood alleviation scheme, would protect around 65 properties with a low risk of flooding, and about 40 properties at a high risk of flooding would still remain at risk. Most of the 150 properties that were flooded in the October 2001 flood would remain at risk because they were flooded from surface water caused by Robins Brook, not the River Blackwater. Residents of areas flooded elsewhere in the country, such as Somerset and Yorkshire, are crying out for flood alleviation schemes, but no one who I've spoken to in Coggeshall, who was flooded in 2001, wants the scheme because they know the harm far outweighs the benefit. Residents in Bridge Street, the Gravel, Grange Hill and surrounds have all told me how their homes were flooded by surface water runoff hours before the river burst its banks. Back in 2017, the Environment Agency said the most cost-effective way of managing the flood risk was to continue with the current operational and maintenance regime, i.e. making sure that the River Blackwater was able to flow properly and Robins Brook could flow through Coggeshall without blockages, and that's what caused the 2001 flood. Then in 2020, something changed. The EA, the Environment Agency, suddenly announced their plans for the flood alleviation scheme with financial support from Blackwater Aggregates, but that £8 million of financial support from Blackwater Aggregates would come in return for the Environment Agency securing Blackwater Aggregates access to minerals which would otherwise be out of reach. The real winner here is Blackwater Aggregates, a company linked with Gent Fairhead and Cemex, the multi-million minerals group. The loser is the community of Coggeshall. Can I continue a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, the scheme relies on the Blackwater Aggregates getting planning permission for a quarry on a site that is not already specified in the Essex Minerals local plan. The Environment Agency will use the flood alleviation scheme to justify the gravel extractions and meet further conditions as set out in the plan. And then in red, as said, I've got the conditions and how many of the residents don't see them as being justifiable. The justification of the quarry and the 300-metre long dam is the flood of 2001. 203 homes and 15 businesses in Coggeshall, Fearing and Calverton were damaged in a flood that has been described as a 1 in 1,000 year event. 5 years after the flood, proposals for managing flood risk were explored, but the level of risk did not justify government grants. With this level of risk to a relatively small number of properties, the government grants could not be justified at that time. Then in 2014, the planning inspector made changes to the draft minerals plan, removing 2 of Blackwater Aggregate sites from the list of preferred sites to reduce the impact of the environment of such a concentration of extraction in one area. I believe the Bradwell quarry is the biggest in Essex. A further 155 hectares of extraction, bringing quarry work in so close to a settlement, should also not be permitted. We understand the Environment Agency and Blackwater Aggregates will be submitting a planning application for this proposal very soon. The decision on this application will decide the future of Coggeshall as well as the fate of its past. Can protecting around 100 properties from a more than 100-year chance of flooding justify the destruction of the landscape surrounding a unique medieval town when there are other alternatives? The vast majority of Coggeshall residents are against this proposal. It will cause irreparable harm to the Blackwater Valley, destroying the landscape that gives Coggeshall its character. It is a solution that is out of all proportion to the problem, a proposal that will affect the lives of local residents for decades. The Environment Agency insists there are no alternatives, and without the quarry there can be no scheme. But there are other ways to manage risk and protect properties.
Can you wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This morning I visited, I was invited by Giles Cood-Adams, the owner of Fearingbury Farm between Coggeshall and Fearing, to look at an area of wetland he has just created. If anyone from this committee would like to visit, I can help arrange it. Basically, I'll go to the conclusion. I sit on the DNR committee at Essex, and I've seen that the seam of gravel that runs across Essex is very wide, and it runs from Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire to the coast of Clacton. We don't need to excavate sand and gravel from within metres of a small historic medieval town. Many other suitable locations away from settlements and natural riverside habitats are available within Essex. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you for letting me speak longer.
No, that's okay. Right. Okay, we'll see you in a bit. Right, members, we will move on to agenda item 5, which is to agree a response to the Minerals Local Plan review changes. Report is going to be presented by Julie, who is on screen. Julie.
Thank you, Chair. I do apologise. I seem to be having trouble with my IT.
Okay, we'll bear with you. Yes, I think if we can find a way around it, would be helpful. I think Alan is going to share his screen.
Is it showing now?
Yes, I think we've got it. Well done.
Apologies for that.
That's all right. These things happen.
This consultation relates to sand and gravel extraction only. Views are sought on the proposed amendment to the Minerals Local Plan Policy S6, provision for sand and gravel extraction, and also to the accompanying topic paper, where the rationale for both of these changes and the call for sites are set out. This public consultation also initiates the call for sites exercise. The Minerals Authority states that this consultation follows on from analysis of the responses received to the 2021 consultation. Amendments are now proposed which are too significant to proceed without further public consultation. These proposed changes do not, however, represent a finalised position, as there remains further work to be done. Analysis remains to be done on representations to be received as part of this process, and on sustainability and habitats regulation assessments, health and equality impact assessments, and analysis using the most up-to-date information and any other relevant information which might arise. This means that the information presented here may be subject to future change. Following this further work, a formal Regulation 18 public consultation will be undertaken on the finalised proposals. The Minerals Authority here is seeking views on its initial proposals and methods. The 2014 Minerals Plan used an apportionment from the national and subnational guidelines for aggregate provision in England in calculating mineral requirements. These guidelines have expired and are no longer appropriate to use for forecasting future needs. Instead, the NPPF required this calculation to be based on a rolling average of 10 years sales data and other relevant local information, and an assessment of all supply options. This recalculation has led to a reduction in anticipated sand and gravel need within the county from 4.31 million tonnes per annum to 3.7 million tonnes per annum. The Minerals Authority considers that some flexibility was needed so that an upturn in economic activity could be accommodated within the plan, and hence a buffer of 20% has been included. The rationale is set out in the accompanying topic paper. The plan will ensure a provision of a 7-year land bank to exist at the end of the plan period, as shown in the slide. The 2014 plan did not allocate for a 7-year land bank to exist after the end of the plan period, as the NPPF was not clear in the need to do so. The Minerals Authority now believe that implementing this provision will maintain a safe and steady supply of mineral during the period at the end of the plan and the beginning of a new plan. They also note that an appeal inspector in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Minerals and Waste Local Plan 2021 had indicated the need to have a 7-year land bank at the end of the plan period. In the Council's response to the 2021 Minerals Plan review, Braintree District welcomed that no new sites were being proposed. However, this situation has now changed and members may wish to update the Council's position. A letter of response has been drafted and comprises Appendix 1, and I apologise that this was not included in the agenda. The Minerals Authority's topic paper does include Braintree District's comments together with their response, and members may wish to note this. Whilst not directly relevant to this consultation, the letter in Appendix 1 reiterates the Council's earlier concerns and reserves the right to comment more fully on future proposals. It also cites that it would support strengthening of policy such that windfall sites are only supported in exceptional circumstances, and support that mineral extraction will count towards meeting the total mineral needs. Slides 6 and 7 are intended to inform members of the Mineral Authority's next steps in considering policy S6 and conducting the call for sites. In relation to S6, the Minerals Authority will issue a schedule of consultation responses and their comments, a revised topic paper and redrafted amendments. For the call for sites, a schedule of preferred and non-preferred sites, site selection methodology and site assessments will be published. All of this work will be followed by a public consultation under Regulation 18 of the Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England Regulations 2012 as amended. In relation to Councillor Thorogood's statement, I would add that we are similarly concerned about unallocated sites coming forward outside of the plan and the cumulative impacts it may cause. Hence the points raised in our earlier consultation, which the Minerals Authority have attempted to address. But there is no planning application at this stage that we could provide any details or comments on. Thank you. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much for that, Julie. Members, we had round a little earlier today a copy of the response, which I hope everybody's had a chance to read. On page 5 of your agenda, under point 2.1, there are 6 recommendations, which quite neatly, I think, summarises our position on this. And then on page 8, there are the options, the 3 options. Would anybody like to make a comment at all? I will say, yes, Councillor Everard.
Yes, I just wanted to say, we just say the end of the plan period and all that sort of stuff, but should we not clarify that a bit more?
Julie, did you hear that point from Councillor Everard?
Forward plan or something like that, you know, it says plan, and that could have referred to anything in a way.
Yes, we can certainly do that.
Please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we'll make a note and do that.
I think we'd be happy to have that clarified. I would just say that we've made, very, as council, robust response throughout this, and we continue to be very disappointed that at the possibility that new sites may need to be added, but also you'll note in the response letter in the second paragraph, we are pointing out that over 50% of the sand and gravel for the whole of Essex is coming from Braintree district, yes, and from a quite a small concentrated area where I think there is no doubt it's going to have a significant impact. So I think we continue to be quite robust in our concerns about that. So, members, unless anybody else has a comment to make, so on page 8, under point 4, there are 3 options, which are to approve submission of the comments outlined in the letter at Appendix 1, that's the letter we had today, in response to the consultation, to approve amended comments to the submission, or to not submit any comments to the consultation. I would suggest, members, that 4.1, that we approve submission of the comments outlined in the letter. I think it is quite a robust response. If anybody agrees with that and would like to move it, could somebody? Thank you, Councillor Wrench. And a seconder, please. Councillor Mrs. Scattergood. All right. Thank you, members. So, Julie, I think we seem to be very happy that that letter, goes out. We're happy with it, and I think we should just continue to keep expressing our feelings on this. Yeah. All right. Yes. Sorry, Councillor Everard.
I think we've made the point.
Yes.
We've got to keep with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, members. Right, we will move on to... Oh, yes, sorry, we need to get Councillor Thorogood back. Councillor Everard, could you just switch your mic off, please, just in case it...
Is it not?
Yeah, it was. It's all right. Right, okay. Right, members. Agenda item 6 is the Nationally Significant Infrastructure Project, otherwise known as an NSIP, which is the Bramford to Twinstead grid reinforcement. And this is going to be presented, I think we have a double act here of Alan and Matt. Thank you.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Councillor Scattergood. This is, as Councillor Scattergood just said, this is, Councillor Spray, sorry, just said this is the NSIP for the Bramford to Twinstead proposals. What NSIP is Nationally Strategic Infrastructure Project. They were introduced by the Planning Act in 2008. And this was a process that is aimed to streamline the decision-making for major infrastructure projects. Nationally significant infrastructure projects are given planning permission for something called a development consent order, and the 2008 Act created a new regime for development consent orders, and this covers certain types of infrastructure, such as sort of nuclear, wind energy, airport, harbour proposals over a certain size. Section 14 to 30 of the Planning Act sets out the type of development, as I just set out. For the thresholds for an NSIP for electrical lines, it's anything over 132 kilovolts or 2 kilometres in length. That would, anything above that threshold qualifies as a NSIP. As this is an application for an NSIP, it will be dealt with by the Planning Inspectorate, who will make a recommendation to the Secretary of State, who in turn will have the authority to decide whether or not development would go ahead. So NSIP process, they are a more front-loaded approach, and we have had things previously. There have been previous stages of consultation. So the NSIP process comprises of 6 key stages, so that covers pre-application stage, and the acceptance stage, which is where a proposer submits to the planning inspector, and then there's a pre-examination, examination before a decision is made, and each of those stages has a time limit as to when it has to be done. So, upon the receipt of an application for development consent, the EU planning inspector will have about 28 days to decide whether or not to accept it, and then from that date there'll be a 6-month period for the inspectorate to examine the application. So in total, the whole process should take about 15 months. So that should be fairly straightforward. Braintree Council are working with other local authorities, so we're working with Essex County Council, Suffolk County Council, as well as BABA, and the ANOB project. So while we are currently with consultations, we're at the statutory consultation stage. So in order for Braintree to provide a thorough response, we've had to appoint several specialist consultants to provide us advice on things like built heritage and ecology, where we have place services, and we've appointed Wardle Armstrong to provide information on things like noise, vibrations and hydrology issues. So the NSIPs are also, they're quite resource intensive for the authority, so to help offset this, we've undertaken a planning performance agreement where the applicant will cover the local authority's expenses. This includes things like BDC officer time for meeting, consultant costs, stuff like that. As it's a joint PPA with Suffolk and Essex, we were expecting it to be signed off by the end of the month, although BDC has basically agreed its costs. So, for all the NSIP proposals going forward, the planning policy team and development management are working together on this, which is why we have Matthew Wild with us today, who will take on the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Matt.
Thank you, Alan. Good evening, members. So I've got the maps, just to give you a flavour of what is being proposed, and the plan that's in front of you at the moment hasn't really come out that well on the screen, but basically in the red over here is Bramford, where the new line starts, and over this side is Twinstead, where the new line finishes. Just to give you a bit of a geographical kind of understanding, so Sudbury is over here, Howstead, Colchester, Ipswich. The whole route is about 29 kilometres in length. Okay, so this plan actually shows the route, more specifically the draft order limits. So the route itself won't be as wide as the red line corridor that it's showing, but that's just the red line order limits include things for mitigation and such like. So just in terms of where we are, so the Bramford substation is here in the black, and the line goes down. There's two options they're looking at by Hinchinham Woods in Suffolk, and the line keeps going all the way down through Suffolk, through the area of natural beauty, and then comes into our district over here. So that this black line, hopefully you can see, denotes the start of the Braintree district. As you can see, we have quite a small proportion of the overall route. The actual route itself is this bit down here, and actually all of this stuff up this side, apart from the substation, actually is to either be modified or removed. So really the only new bit is this bit down here and the substation, but I'll obviously come on to that. Okay, that's come out better than I was expecting on the plan, so that's good. So this is the section. So this is the sort of section that's on the edge of Braintree, if you like. So it's still in Suffolk. So you've got the area of natural beauty in the yellow for context, and then the purple hexagons are the cable ceiling and compounds they're looking at, which I've got an example slide on to show you what that looks like, or what that could look like. And then you've got, so the black is the existing 400 kilovolt line that is to be retained. The green is the existing 132 kilovolt line, which is owned by UK Power Networks, which is to be removed. And then you've got the proposed 400 kilovolt line, which is the sort of in purple. So it goes underground from the area of natural beauty to the cable ceiling and compound, and then the line goes above ground to the South Assington, and then hits the wood in Workhouse Green ceiling and compound, and then goes underground. So the reason I've showed you this is just to show you what the context of where the line has come from to why it's underground in our district, but also it's important to be mindful of the position of the cable ceiling and compound, because that, even though it's not in our district, it might have views across the valley. So it's important, as I say, it's important to be mindful of that. I think it's also worth pointing out, and it's not obviously shown here, but the actual scheme itself does propose to remove over 25 kilometres of existing 132 kilovolt line. So while there will be a new line in parts, a lot of the existing line will be taken down. Okay, right, so the Stour Valley section, so the cable CN compound that we were just looking at, the Workhouse Green one, that's here, so we've just gone further west. So the line then goes underground, as I said, goes under the Stour, and that's kind of where you then enter into the Braintree district. And the line itself is underground all the way around here, and Hennyback Road is just up here to the north of Elphinstone. And then you've got the cable CN compound to sort of south of Hennyback Road. So as I say, the only part of the works or the new line that would be above ground is in our district is the cable CN compound and also the substation, which you can't see in this plan, but as I said, I'll show you that. So the green is to be removed, so the 132 line that we were just looking at, that's to be removed, but also in this particular location, part of the existing 400 kilovolt line is also to be removed. So there's a sort of this Twinstead T, it's called, is basically being removed. So I've just moved further west again, so we can just see that that cable CN compound that I was just looking at. I just wanted to show you this slide because it does show the location of the substation here, which is obviously some distance from the edge of the new line, but it has been included as part of the NSIP because it is associated works to get, because of the removal of the 132 kilovolt line, they need to provide electrical equivalency, it's called, to effectively UK power networks to be able to essentially justify the loss of that line to try and get that sort of neutral benefit. There is one thing that we noted that isn't really shown on this plan very clearly, but there is the 132 line does actually carry on up here and down here, and I've shown that on this plan here. As you can see, it's basically on extract another plan, and in our response to National Grid, we've queried why this section of the 132 line is to be retained when, as I said, the 132 line here has been removed and this Twinstead T has been removed. So we've asked why they can't remove it to this point here where they're going to join up with the substation if it gets approval. So the cable CN compound example, so the information in the statutory consultation where we are now isn't the exact details, but it does portray a worst case scenario of what they're looking at. So this is the cable CN compound. This is the one specifically by Hennyback Road, which is the one in our district. 70 metres by 50 metres is the compound, but in terms of the actual electrical equipment, it doesn't take up all of that. It's I think the gantries, which are these things here, are about 14 metres high, and then the rest of it's a bit lower. And as I said before, the purpose is to transfer electricity either up above ground or below ground, depending on which line is coming in. So they are necessary to basically switch between the two, unless the whole route was above ground or below ground, and then they wouldn't be necessary. So this would be smaller than the substation, which we'll see in a second, but obviously still important to consider the visual impact of that. Okay, yeah, so the substation, so the purple is kind of where the equipment would go on the compound. I think the orange would be kind of like the hard standing, and then the sort of green is the sort of wider benefits and mitigation that they would look to put in terms of like additional planting and that sort of thing. It's not fixed. I know they'll be looking at something slightly different to this as proposals become further advanced, but it's just a flavour really of what the substation could look like. And there's also some other associated works. For example, they're moving one of the pylons that they're already and putting a new underground line to connect to the existing 132 line, which they could do without going through the NSIP process, but they've included it in the proposals for clarity, really. And I think it is worth noting that National Grid are intending to submit a separate Town and Country Planning Act planning application for the substation later this year. So that will likely become for members of the Planning Committee in due course. So continuing with the substation and more specifically about the site. So this photo is taken standing, we're looking at the A131 which runs up here, so I'm kind of at the other side of it, so I'm about here actually on the plan. So you can see the woods either side, Butler's Wood and Waldegrave Wood, and the existing lines that go through the site already. The below image is an example of what the substation could look like. So the top image is like an aerial picture, and the bottom image is like a sectional image, so it's kind of mirrored up. So it's about 12 metres for the gantries, where the downleads coming from the pylon, and then you've got the super grid transformers, which are these, and then the associated electrical equipment, etc. So, as I say, about 12 metres at one point, and then the actual super grid transformer is about 10 metres in height, I should say. So just summarising then. So, and at the timetable. So we're currently at the statutory consultation stage. It's been through various stages so far, and this pre-application stage, as Alan said. So the only thing left they've got to do now in the pre-application is the environmental statement. So as part of the statutory consultation, they did the PIA, which is the preliminary environmental impact report, which obviously you'll see in detailed comments on from our various specialisms and consultees. So the environmental statement is kind of the accumulation of that and the scoping report that was done before. So that's coming sort of later this year. And then what they'll do is then they'll submit to the development consent order to the planning inspectorate at sort of the end of this year. They get 28 days, the planning inspectorate, to decide whether the application meets the standards required to be acceptable for examination. And then once they do that, they're in pre-examination where the public will be able to register with the planning inspectorate to become an interested party and make relevant representations. And then sort of into 2024 for the final decision. But in terms of the actual examination itself, the planning inspector has 6 months to carry out the examination, and then during that stage, interested parties who have registered can make a representation and provide their views. And then what happens, the planning inspector must report on the application, their findings, to the Secretary of State within 3 months of the close of the examination, and then the Secretary of State has a further 3 months. So you're looking at the whole process taking up to a year in terms of examination at the earliest. And then post-decision, obviously, there's going to be, if it gets approved, there'll be lots of discharge of conditions which will need to be sorted out. But they're anticipating doing the construction from sort of the last quarter of 2024 and finishing the last quarter of 2028, so about a 4-year window. Hopefully that helps give the members a better overview of the project, but if you have got any questions, Alan and I will do our best to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Alan. Right, members, just the response letter is on pages 28 to 34 of the agenda, but Councillor Scattergood, I think you were first to make some comments.
Thank you. Matthew, you did say that the Twinstead T was going to be removed. This is something that we have been told locally is not happening. They're going to reduce some of the arms on it, because if they remove it, they can't get the power from the Twinstead T across to the new substation. There is no way it would get there. Because they're not proposing to put any new power lines from the Twinstead T to the substation. So the Twinstead T is going to stay. Its arms are going to be taken off of it where it goes down towards Braintree, but the actual... And they spent, 3 years ago, they spent millions replacing it, so I can't imagine they're going to take it down. We've been told quite clearly that the existing 400k goes from there across, will be going across to the substation. The substation does give a lot of concern locally. It's open countryside on a flat plateau. It's just, yes, and we are asking for it to be taken further back. I know officers are not aware, but there have been some very, 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 very heated meetings, which I've not attended, unfortunately, because I was off sick, but I've seen the minutes of them. And the people in Elphinstone have now had private meetings with National Grid, and we've got people saying they're not having it on their ground on their land, and they've come forward with 2 new proposals which will bring it nearer to Sudbury. National Grid have said they will look at both of these proposals, and if they agree to either of them, they're going to have to go through the whole consultation progress again. So, just warning you, this is not the end, or this could be just the start of it. But I would like clarification on the Twinstead T, because National Grid have told me quite categorically it will not be removed. It is really ugly monstrosity, and it would be lovely if it was going. But if it does go, then and I can't see how they would get the power from Twinstead T to the new substation. There's absolutely no way. We haven't got any plans of how they're going to get the power from Twinstead T to the new substation. They're very cleverly telling us they're going to build a new substation. We don't know where it's going, how it's going to get there. Do you know how it's going to get there?
Right. Matt, would you like to tackle that one?
Sorry.
That's okay. I think that's a very good point. I'm happy to amend the response to get some further clarification around that in terms of what's happening with the Twinstead T.
Existing 400 is still going to go across. Whether they're taking down the 400 that they're taking down is that goes down towards Braintree.
But yeah, from my just looking, looking at the plan, it seems to me that the existing 400 kV line is what's going to serve the substation, and actually the new line is not going to be served by the substation at all. It's going to bypass it completely. But yeah. So I will clarify that, because as I say, as shown on their plans, it is showing to be removed, but quite how much it's going to be removed, they haven't said. So we can certainly amend the response to that, do that for you. Thank you.
And the paperwork that's come to my house, they've said some arms will be reduced.
Right. Okay. Yes, Councillor Thorogood.
I've just noticed in the letter on page 28, in 1.2, it just says BDC have declared a climate change energy. I think that's probably predictive text. Is meant to say emergency.
Yeah, that was an error. It's meant to say emergency. Sorry about that.
Right. Okay.
So that was all.
Fine. Okay. Right. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Everard.
My naive cover of this is that, and I wanted to ask how much damage the 400 kVA existed in the Gales, the ones overground.
How much? Oh, right. Whether with the storm, whether there was any damage, I don't know.
I'm not aware of any damage. I think it was more so the local network that was damaged in places, because that's what UK Power Networks own, the 132 kilovolt lines, which are the ones that serve the like customers, like houses. National Grid deal with the getting the power around the country effectively. So I don't think any of their infrastructure, certainly in our region, was affected. But I haven't been told if it was.
And
yes,
also the electric charging electric cars. This is going to put a tremendous load on everything, and this is partly why you're doing this, presumably. And from a very naive sort of thing, obviously, damage you've mentioned anyway, but the environmental side of things is good, and the scenic value is good. I'll come in later on.
Okay. Councillor Scattergood, it's your sort of area. Are you aware, just out of interest, of any particular damage from the storm?
None whatsoever. They go over with helicopters every few weeks. It's absolutely dangerous to watch. It frightens the life out of me, and they inspect them all. But the local farmer tells me that they were installed in his grandfather's day, and that the existing pylons are coming to the end of their life. So we are hoping if they come to the end of life, they'll put that lot underground as well.
Right. Okay. I would just say, to be fair to National Grid in some respects, they have listened to a lot of the consultation responses. They are removing quite a good stretch of the overhead lines, and they are undergrounding quite a lot, which is good. The substation at Butler's Wood, it's big, it's not pretty. If this goes ahead, it's got to go somewhere. If there are other alternatives, even if it's moving it just a reasonably small distance to a different location, if local people are meeting with National Grid and making those representations, then I hope they would listen to that. Either way, the landscaping around it is going to have to be really, really good, because it's all sensitive countryside around there, so they are going to have to make a really supreme effort with their planting and their landscaping. But Councillor Scattergood, you said that a number of local people are making representations that it should be relocated, set back further. So I think we will have.
Very close to too many historic buildings.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we'll have to just see what. Okay. We'll have to see what comes out of that. Any other comments, Councillor Everard? Did you want to come back on anything? Okay. Right. So we have recommendation, which is on page 12, that we proceed as drafted, but we have two options, which are on page 21. Option 1 was to proceed with a response as drafted, but option 2 is to proceed but with amendments. So I think we are suggesting one change, Matt, around the question around Twinstead T. So option 2 is that members ask for some changes to the response to the statutory consultation as set out in the letter, and that's appropriate if we feel the letter misses something that should be said. So I'm guessing that option 2 is probably the one that the committee would like to settle on this evening, so Matt can make that change. We will just ask for clarification around what exactly is happening at Twinstead T. So if members are happy with that, if I could have somebody to move option 2, please. Councillor Everard, and a seconder, please. Councillor Wrench. Thank you very much. Right, assuming you're happy with that, Matt, that you'll just redraft it.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We'll do that. Thank you, and we'll make sure we spell check it and sense check it.
Yes. That's fine. Good. Okay. Right. Thank you. Right, we move on to item 7, Malden District Council Issues and Options Consultation 2022 response. Alan, I think you're taking this one, aren't you?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Spring. So Malden District Council, they've issued a issues and options consultation. Malden had previously adopted its local plan back in 2017. However, since then, its larger strategic allocations have not been delivering the expected level of housing growth as they should be. As such, this has triggered a clause in the plan which means that the local plan has to be reviewed. The issues and option consultations are a non-statutory consultation, and they just set out a number of issues which the local plan will be looking at, such as housing provision, options for growth, and options for growth which the authority would like to consider through the production of a new local plan. So Malden is adjacent to Braintree district, so we have a joint interest in many things such as the A12 proposals, junction improvements, things like that, and obviously we will be sort of having discussions with Malden through things like the duty to cooperate, stuff like that. The big change from the previous local plan is that Malden no longer considers itself to be its own housing market, so it's extended its housing market to include Braintree and Chelmsford. Officers consider this to be more realistic. The council has also updated their housing figure, but it should be noted that Braintree officers would not support a request from Malden to deliver any of their housing needs. It's presented 7 options for growth. These are set out in paragraph 3.15 of the report. Of these options, the first 3, which focus growth around the main settlements, larger sustainable villages, etc., are considered to be the most appropriate. The other options are generally quite limited by the number of available sites. However, further rounds of consultation may reveal more sites, which could help some of those options become more viable, but at this stage they don't appear to be. So we're generally, generally supportive of the approaches proposed in the document for dealing with the other issues in the plan as well. So we broadly support Malden District Council's approach to reviewing its local plan, and we look forward to commenting on later drafts of the plan as well as any additional evidence-based studies which may have an impact on the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Right. Comments? Anyone at all? The recommendation is set out on page 58, which is that the comments set out in the report are submitted in our response. I did notice reading through it that I think we were, if I can just find it, yes, point 3.4, that we were a bit concerned that the study and findings were completed with no involvement from BDC, which would have been expected in line with the duty to cooperate. And I do remember having a conversation with an officer a little while ago around that. So I'm assuming, has that message been communicated back to them that we just were a little disappointed? But yeah, okay. Other than that, I've got no comments. If nobody else has anything, I think the response is perfectly good. So page 58, that the comments set out in the report are submitted in response to the Malden District Issues and Options consultation. Could I have somebody to move, please? Councillor Scattergood, and a seconder, Councillor Hume. Thank you. Right, good. That concludes the main agenda items. We have no urgent business on item 8, and no exclusion public and press on item 9, and no private session. So at 6:55 I can close the meeting. Thank you very much, members. Thank you. Good. Well done. Well, Wendy, I'm very glad you came.